Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Grif here. As the summer gets closer and the water starts to warm up, the grass will start to grow, and the baits that I really like to throw are wake baits. But I throw them a little bit different than everybody else. So we're going to take a little bit of time and talk about how I like to use these things and what they do for me. All right?
Welcome to the Hookup Tackle. The Hookup Tackle is the world's largest showcase of Megabass products, featuring baits and colors not found at any other dealer. The Hookup also offers a wide display of OSP, Evergreen, Depths, Lucky Craft, Jackall, and many more. The Hookup Tackle is owned and operated by family, is staffed by guides and verified tackle nerds who love helping anglers elevate their craft. If you're in the Phoenix area, we'd love to have you stop by our showroom and check out the wonderful world of Megabass and the Hookup for yourself. If you shop online, there are almost 10,000 SKUs of Megabass products alone, with hundreds of other companies and new products being added daily. So next time you're looking for that hard-to-find bait, that color your fish have never seen before, or maybe you just want to elevate your game, look at thehookuptackle.com.
So first, I want to talk about the Daibuzzin Heavy Hitter. It's a small shad-style bait, meant to be fished at a medium pace, but I like to slow it down a little bit. I like to use these completely on top of the surface. I don't like to go subsurface at all, so I'll creep them very, very slow. It's a very interesting bait. So it's a profile that many of you are used to seeing, but this one is different in the fact that it has just this single knocker in there that's extremely loud. So it's not going to have a bunch of BBs in there. It's just going to be loud, and I like to creep it really slow so it stays on top of the surface. It's going to create that sound, and the fish love them. OSP Daibuzzin Heavy Hitter. Next on my list is one of my favorite baits, and that's going to be the Gong. Alright, everybody's heard us talk about the Gong a lot. In the summertime, the Gong is the one that produces for me the most, and I just love to throw it. It's a very unique bait, and the fact that it's shaped like a monkey, but it's a super effective wake bait. It has this fluted tail on the full-size Gong, and as you're running it through the water, this tail will just plop on the water and make a plopping slash scraping slash squeaking sound, and that noise along with the body roll of the bait, it's definitely going to get bit. So also this one, I'm not going to let it go subsurface. If you crank it in too fast, it will dive. But if you just crank it slow enough to where that tail sticks out of the water and it's just rubbing the top of the water surface, it's going to get bit. So they have two sizes, the Gong and the Gong Junior, which has a more Colorado style blade on the back of it. There is a pretty good difference in size on these. These blades actually make two totally different noises. The full-size Gong is going to be a lot louder. The Gong Junior is going to be a little bit more subtle, but it's still going to be loud. It's very loud, so if you need to change up the size of the bait, they have the option for you to do so. Alright, next up for me will be the Megabass I-Loud. Megabass I-Loud is a jointed wake bait, and it has a prop on the back of it. There it is here. So this bait is also, we're just going to fish it on top of the surface. It's going to roll and it's going to swim at the same time, and then that bait's going to, or that prop's going to spin in the back. And it's going to give you like a buzz bait type sound, but really, really subtle. All right. The unique thing about the I-Loud is it has this thing in the center. It's like a spring-loaded ball that's on a swivel, and it has this small clack. So every time it goes to the side, you're going to get that noise as it bounces up against the side on the inside. They call it the RAB, the Radar Action Balancer, I believe it's called. And you're going to see that in a lot of the bigger wake baits from Megabass. You fish it super slow. It's got a ton of action. The slower you move it for me, the better the action is. And you can't really go too slow. And you can't go too fast, but if you leave it on top of the surface, it's going to get every component of the bait, the prop, you know, the glide or the joint, and the roll and moving action. Next up for me is going to be the Valley Hill Boogie Back. This is a gill shaped bait. When you move it, it's going to kind of go head down, and it's going to do the same thing. It's going to roll. It's so tall that it's going to roll, and it's going to move side to side because of the joint that's in there. This one is one of the few ones that I use that doesn't have that super deep knocking sound in there. It's a little bit more high pitched, but it draws bites like crazy. Valley Hill Boogie Back. All right, next one for me is this is a new bait for me. This is going to be the Attic Annie 175 MR. So this one is meant to be fished super slow. It's actually a 3-piece bait with the tail as an extra joint on there, and it's going to do the same thing. It's going to roll and move side to side. It's going to, the back end is going to have a lot of snake-like action on there. Doesn't really have a ton of sound in there, or any at all. You're just going to hear all the components clacking together when it's moving. This one has to be moved super slow. If you want to keep it on the top of the water and not let it dive at all, just move it super slow, and you will get all the same action as if you were burning it and letting it dive down a little bit. Annie 175. There we go. And next for me is the Jackall Blast Bone. Alright, so this is going to be very similar to the Annie, except for it's only a 2-piece, and it has a soft plastic tail on the back. Alright, the action is very similar. This one's going to stay at the top of the water column a little bit easier, so you can pick it up a little bit, but I would recommend just keeping it on top and letting it do its thing on the top of the water. As it moves, it's going to create this wake, and then it's just going to have the fish are going to look up and see the profile, and that crazy rolling action just gets them going. And that's the Jackall Blast Bone. And then finally for me, not a traditional wake bait style, but I use it the same way I use all the other ones. Megabass I-Wing 135. I cast it out and I move it as slow as possible. This bait was made to be fished at any pace. So you can burn it, you can move it slow, or however you want to use it. Whatever the fish are asking for, but I found that if I move it as slow as possible, and sometimes it's not even going back and forth, but this one also has that RAB system on the inside of it, and it barely needs any movement to get that thing clacking. So when I'm moving it slow, sometimes it's not even doing its swim thing, but that RAB is in there clacking, and the fish come unglued for it. Super violent when they hit it. It's also a lot of fun. So those are going to be my top wake style baits. Let's talk a little bit about the gear that I use. This is a 7/8 combat stick wake bait rod. I use this. It's one of my favorite rods in my collection. This one right here. It has enough parabolic bend to handle the treble hook baits, and it casts very well from a 1/2 ounce all the way to probably 3 ounces is what I use it for. I have it paired up with a 14-pound fluorocarbon and a Mago 001 reel with an 8.1 to 1 gear ratio. I like the faster gear ratio because it allows me to have a lot of line control, and then I can speed up or slow down as I want, and I just have a lot of control with the baits that I fish. The biggest key for me fishing these baits is when the lights go down is when I'm gonna throw these baits. So as I'm fishing through the day, as soon as the night comes, like not as the sun's going down, but like as the sun is down. As soon as the sun's down, I'll tie one of these on, cast it, and just work it super slow. Give fish the time to track it, and then let them eat it. The keys that I'm looking for is high grass. I'm looking for shallow structure that leads to deeper water, like ledge style stuff, but super shallow. Like I'll toss it into, 6 to 12 inches and work it into, like I fish the rivers a lot, so I'll work it into the channel, and that's when I'm usually getting bit. As soon as that depth changes, that's when the bite usually happens for me. And then the darkness is what I believe is the biggest thing about it. During the daytime, like Early morning, you won't see me throwing a bait like this. That's more for other style top waters and that limited visibility. I want no visibility when I'm throwing these. That's why I move them real slow. Also, if you work the baits, you'll notice if you work them too fast, they'll dive, which is traditional wake bait style. Just get it subsurface and let it dive and get that weight going on top of the water. But I like to keep the baits on top of the water. I feel like I have a better bite ratio when I'm throwing it like that. It lets them look all the way up, and then when they hit it violently. So I'd rather have them hit it violently than have them just suck it down underneath the water, because it's a lot of fun.
So break down to me, why would you choose one of these over the other? So why would you choose the blast bone over the Annie in a situation when you said that they're pretty similar?
So for me, I'm gonna always start small and work my way up. If I feel like they're only gonna eat the small baits, I'm gonna throw this one right here, the smallest one that I throw, and then I'll work my way up. The difference between a bait like the Annie and the blast bone is, for the way that I like to fish, the blast bone is a lot more user friendly for me because it doesn't take a lot to keep it on top of the surface. The Annie kind of wants to dip subsurface a lot faster. Also, the action is slightly different on them both. The blast bone will move a little bit more at a slower pace.
Why would you fish the I-Jack over the I-Wing or vice versa? Since they both have the same knock, why would you choose one over the other?
Well, the I-Jack, or the I-Loud, is going to be a little bit more aggressive of a bait. Even though it's smaller, it's definitely going to be more aggressive because there's a lot more moving parts to it, especially with the prop in the back. This prop makes a lot of noise. And the I-Wing, when using it, it sits on top of the water, and it doesn't move much. So all the fish is seeing is this. And then it's going to have that same knock. That knock, that loud, deep knock, it just gets the fish's attention. It causes them to look up. When they look up, they're going to decide whether they want to bite it or not. And then...
So if you want something more subtle, you would go with the I-Wing over the
yes.
I-Loud. Okay.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you can use the I-Wing in a way that it's more aggressive, but that's just not how I do it.
Is there ever a time that you work the baits faster, or is it always super slow?
It's always super slow with these style baits. If I want to go faster, I'm just going to tie something else on. So there are other options that are very similar. So this Daibuzzin heavy hitter, they have a normal Daibuzzin that has a different internal knocking system in there that's better suited for going faster. It's got a lot of small BBs in there, or ball bearings or whatever they put in there. It's got a lot of small ones, so it rattles a lot more. But when I want to go slow and loud, that's the style of bait that I'm using.
Alright, and then with the Gong and the Gong Junior, why would you choose the small one over the big one, or vice versa?
And that's going to be the same way, at the same reason. The sound is going to be a lot different on both of them. They're both loud, but the Gong is super loud, and it makes a deeper sound. So the Gong Junior makes a more high-pitched sound, still loud, but not as loud. And then the Gong, full-size Gong, is going to be a little bit louder with a deeper sound.
So for you, it's more trial and error. If they're not biting the full-size Gong, or they're not biting the I-Loud, or something that's super loud, you'll try and go with something a little more subtle.
Yes.
Just through trial and error of the night.
Yeah. So I'm gonna figure it out. So I'm fishing from the bank. I can only target the structure that I can see. So as I'm finding things, I'll go back to spots that I think will look good, and then, like I said, I'll start with the smallest and then work my way up. If the bite is super aggressive on the smaller bait, or I'm not getting bit, I'm going to upsize. Maybe they can't see it as well, or maybe it's not loud enough. I don't know. All these baits are pretty loud, except for the Annie and the blast bone. So that's why I would choose those. Okay, so if you guys are ever out fishing and the lights go out and you want to just call it quits, tie on something like this and give it a super slow try and just see what happens. The worst that can happen is nothing, but you have the potential of having a really good time in the middle of the night when you can't see a bite and the only thing you're doing is listening, and it could be a good time. So make sure you give it a try. Jeff is going to leave links for all the products that we talked about today. If you have any questions, just comment below, and thanks for watching. See you guys later.